Hey family, so my name is Aaron Hill, and I decided I wanted to do a response video to Gary Vee and Alli Webb's advice to Virginia Houser. Now let me first start off by saying this is not at all to knock their advice or to hate on it or anything like that. I'm a true Gary Vee fan. I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. And by the way, this video won't be edited because I just wanted to kind of get it out, let it be candid, and let it roll. So I'm a huge Gary Vee fan, and one of the main reasons why is because I'm an entrepreneur. I started in about 2007, and I created in 5 years a 6-figure a year backing track, accompaniment track. Some people call it karaoke tracks. I created a 6-figure year business in 5 years, really utilizing everything that Gary Vee is teaching now, the hustle that he had when he built his father's wine business, and really the same thing that he's talking about now that he just applied then because it was in his DNA, I can identify with because it was the same way that I built my business pre-Gary Vee or pre anything like how Gary Vee, it was just DNA for him. It was DNA for me. So anyway, to get to the point though, so you don't click off the video. So I'm watching the Ask Gary Vee 309 with Alli Webb. Great episode. And if you've watched it, I'm sorry that I'm going to go over a few details, but it's just because, I know there's some people that haven't seen it. So there was a woman on there, if you recall, named Virginia Houser. And Virginia is a professional dog trainer who started in 2016. The reason why I'm looking in this direction because I'm reading the comment as well that she wrote, on the video, just to make sure I have my details clear. So she's been training professionally since late 2016, and she's been in office jobs since 2012. She is a person who knows that it's time to go full-time into her passion and into what she knows she really needs to be doing with dog training. And I could really identify, I think a lot of people that listen to her could really feel her, because I know I could identify personally because I know what it feels like to be right there. For me, it was in 2002, to be right there, knowing in my heart what I really need to be doing, and to know and to feel overwhelmed by my present job and for my focus to not be there. Long story short, or short story long, Alli and Gary, in the midst of the gathering information and contextualizing, tell Virginia to quit her job and to quit immediately, to go ahead full throttle on what she knows she needs to do. Great advice. I couldn't agree more with the advice, because like Virginia knows, and Virginia, if you watch this video, hopefully you'll appreciate this. Like she said, she would make what she would make in her current job. She would make dog training and more than likely more. Gary and Alli also agreed that she could make more. In fact, Gary, I think, was the one that mentioned it. And I totally agree as well, because it's really how it works when, not just by the numbers or the math, but also like when your heart is really in something, you're going to give it 150,000%. So it does, change your, it does accelerate your possibilities. Anyway, so Virginia, after they give her that advice and Virginia says, that she is going to quit, the call goes off, and then Virginia drops a comment, and it basically, I'm not going to read the comment, I'll just give a few highlights. She basically said, that she put it into better context, and she basically said that, she's not going to quit, even though she said it in the midst of the phone conversation, because there was another element, which is that she decided to give herself until July 24th, and to save up 20 grand so that she could really prepare. Virginia, you said you felt like you weren't quite authentic because you didn't share that, but I really believe it was probably just because, there's a lot to your situation. So, you probably forgot it, or if you didn't, you didn't have time to explain everything. So I don't really blame you for that. I don't think you were being a liar or not being authentic. There's just a lot to it. So with that, here's what I wanted to get to. So I wrote a comment after Virginia left her comment to say that she was leaving the 24th of July. And here's my comment. I will read this so I can contextualize it. So my comment was, Virginia Hauser, I love it. Here's a small secret tip from a 12-year successful entrepreneur. P.S. I just talked about this same topic related to the power of deadlines on my podcast earlier today. If you guys are interested in hearing that, it's called the Aaron Hill Podcast. And it's on my latest one called Discipline. I think it was Discipline 1 and 2. I said the truth is, in the macro, quitting July 24th and quitting May 8th is exactly the same. After this time, as the successful years start rolling, this time period will collapse from 2 months to a short season to a blink. Similarly to how on the ground, cities within a state are miles apart, but the higher you go up in a plane, they collapse down to a single point that fits under the tip of your finger as you point at that same location. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but this is something, the reason why I wanted to do this particular video, because this is kind of a gem, as I would call it, which is giving everyone my science. It's a segment on my podcast. It's a gem because I think about this a lot when it comes to deadlines or when it comes to overall goals. When you go up in a plane, you get to the point where some space that's really far apart, it's a really wide space, turns into like a single point. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller when you go up. And the same, I notice, happens with our goals and our dreams. So July 24th and May 7th are the same date. Here's better context. Sorry, thanks for hanging in there with me. And yes, I realize I'm going to have an editor for this at some point because, I got to chop it down. So 10 years from now, May 7th and July 24th will collapse down to literally a blink apart. And 20 years from now, to literally a thought apart. So much so that you'll remember the time period, but not the date. Now, she may remember the date because this will be monumental if she does quit and if she makes history after that. But in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that, the farther you go in time, the more, because of the plane effect, when you look back, it was just a period of time. It was just, in the spring going into the summer of 2019. And so that's why, even though they said quit tomorrow, and even though Virginia is saying I'm going to quit July 24th, and I don't feel like I'm being authentic, everything is absolutely fine. And Gary and Alli, I believe, would agree 100%. So, I said, your plan is just as good as quitting tomorrow. And here's the little catch. As long as it doesn't get postponed again and again due to dwelling, like Gary mentioned. I put up a quote the other day. It's on Facebook if you want to check it out. It's Aaron Hill TV on Facebook. And I put up that quote. It was kind of inspired by Gary's flow and what he talks about and what I think about so much, which is dwelling is the foundation for not doing. So the last part I said is, I support you and am excited for you, and Gary will too. Self-awareness. That's what it's all about. And so, I just want to use this as advice to give other people as well. The way that I related to it as far as deadlines on my podcast is that I realized a long time ago that setting deadlines is important, not so much because you always have to meet the deadline, and if you don't meet the deadline, it's a failure. It's not that. It's that if you set a deadline, say for 3 months from now, to have something done, and even if you get it done in 3 months and 2 weeks or 4 months even, it may seem from one perspective on the ground like that was miles apart. It's 30 days later. Wow. But several years later, it really doesn't matter. In fact, let's go about it this way, because this is the better context. If you get something done 4 months later as opposed to 3 months later, or let me rephrase that. If you get something done in 4 months instead of 3 months, then if you look a year later and you look back at it, it's way better than having an open-ended project, or having the entire thing be open-ended, and instead of finishing in 4 months, you may be looking back at it, touching on it in a year, maybe doing a little bit more on it in a year. Like, it puts it into better context. And even if you don't meet your exact deadline, you're still so much in the ballpark that technically you met your deadline, especially 10 or 15, 20 years later, when you're like, yeah, it was in 2019 spring-ish when. So I wanted to, say that to give that as a gem to someone else, who could use it. So lastly, and then I'm out of here, Virginia wrote me back a response, and I hadn't read it yet, so I'm going to read it now. This will be the first time. So Virginia says, "Thank you so much. I agree. I need to focus on the fact that once it's here, it will feel like all the time up to leaving went in the blink of an eye. Perspective is everything." Yes, Virginia. And I know we're not around each other, but high five. So I really celebrate Virginia, and I'm happy because I know she's gonna do it. You could tell from the show that, like Gary and Alli said, they said, we kind of think that maybe you might have called and asked this question really because you need to do it, but you just wanted that permission. Gary mentioned that in another video the other day, and I mean, these are things that, I connect with Gary because his mindset is so similar. I'll give like the seniority honor and say that, my thoughts are very, very similar to how he thinks about a lot of things. And I've always been this way. The permission deal is everything. Sometimes just saying something, like even this message, give someone else permission to say, you know what, I can do it. And I agree. I already knew, I already really knew, but I just needed somebody else to also agree with me so that I can not feel like I'm by myself and not feel like I'm crazy, even though I know I'm not. But I just needed that push. And that kind of social support is important for us. So I celebrate Virginia because, Virginia, I know you're going to do it. I can't wait till July 24th. In fact, I might even do another video on July 24th, like just for you, just celebrating you. Just saying congrats because I know you're doing it today. But beyond that, I celebrate because I know that she's getting ready to walk into the greatest decision she could have ever made. And being a person who in 2003, I was fortunate enough to make that same decision. And then again in 2011, when I went completely full-time. At first, in 2003, I became a musical private contractor. And I did that working for other companies and part-time working for myself up until 2011. I started my business in 2007, and by 2011, I was able to go full-time with my business. So I know exactly what it feels like, and it is the greatest feeling in the world to do what you love, and the money will follow. That was a book I read a while back that I'm going to be doing a book club on. But anyway, I've been way long-winded. Thank you so much to anybody that hung in there with me after this time. I celebrate you, Virginia, and everybody else who decides to take the leap. Whether you do it today, which is May 9th, 2019, or whether you do it on June 9th, 2019, or even if it's August 9th, in 10 or 15 years, it will collapse down to one blink of an eye in time, and it won't matter. You did it exactly in the time that you needed to. So be inspired, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.